All right, what's going on, everyone? So last night, Israel attacked Iran. I think, probably. Now, technically, neither side has stated publicly that that's exactly what happened, but reading between the lines and kind of looking at the conflicting statements between Iran and Israel, I've got a pretty good idea of what took place. So I believe what we saw just happen last night was that Israel took out Syrian air defense radar stations, which opened up some airspace for manned Israeli aircraft to fly into Syria and launch Blue Sparrow air-launched ballistic missiles across Iraq into Iran, specifically the Isfahan area, which houses a military air base as well as a major component of the Iranian nuclear program. Those Blue Sparrow missiles are test missiles designed for air defense networks to shoot them down for Israel to test their air defense systems. So they come with inert or not active warheads. This process allowed Israel to show Iran that they were able to bypass their air defense network and strike in and around key locations inside of Iran, while also allowing Iran the deniability to say nothing happened. This was just a few drones. Everybody go back to normal. It allows both parties to de-escalate this conflict. That possibility is there. Now I'm going to run through the evidence, why I think this is what took place, some reasonings why this makes sense to me, and then some counterarguments to prove why I might be wrong. Because again, we don't have the clear picture as to what took place here. Still waiting on more evidence, which very well may never come. So looking at some of the evidence we have right now, the Syrian government put out a few different press releases overnight saying that Israel attacked their air defense facilities in the southern portion of the country and that damages were caused. The Syrian Surveillance Center told Sky News in Arabic that Israel attacked military radars in southern Syria and added that no targets of the pro-Iranian militias in Syria were attacked, which is notable because following the Iranian attack on Israel last week, there was a lot of speculation that one of the possible targets for Israel to strike could be some of these Iranian-backed militias headed often by or with heavy connections to IRGC officials in Syria and Iraq. So Syria called out here, no, it was not IRGC officials. It was not Iranian-backed militias. These were Syrian air defense assets that were targeted. That opens up the airspace a little bit more. The Syrian airspace is already rather permissive to Israel, but opened up the airspace a little bit more to allow some of these manned aircraft from Israel to fly into that airspace. The next piece of evidence we have here that I'll go ahead and play was released by Iraq, showing what looks to be the first stage booster that fell off from one of the Israeli Blue Sparrow air-launched ballistic target missiles. So these Blue Sparrow missiles are designed as targets, right? So if you're testing an air defense network, you don't just want to do it on paper. You don't just want to do it through simulations. At some point, you got to throw a missile out there, a missile that replicates your enemy's capabilities, what you're likely to defend against, in this case, a series of Iranian ballistic missiles. Throw those out there, launch them at target locations, right, out in the middle of nowhere, and then use your air defense assets in test mode to see if you can actually shoot those down. That's what this Blue Sparrow is. It allows Israel's air defense networks to conduct real-time testing. In turn, those Blue Sparrow missiles have significant capabilities, significant range, and they're very, very accurate, but they don't come with a significant payload, right? They're not designed to blow anything up. They're designed to be shot out of the air. So the warhead is inert, or at the very least, not an active explosive warhead, if you will. Then continuing along this chain of evidence, the commander-in-chief of Iran's army said that the explosions in the sky above Isfahan were related to anti-aircraft systems shooting at what he called a suspicious object, adding that it did not cause any damage. And then according to other Iranian sources, the Iranian air defense systems managed to shoot down flying objects in the skies over Isfahan. According to them, no explosions occurred on the ground. So what we're getting from some of these Iranian sources, and there's been a lot so far, but some key themes are nobody's talking about missiles. They're all talking about flying objects. Some are referencing drones, and we'll come back to that here in a second. But then over and over and over again, one of the key statements coming out of Iran is no damage to the ground. No explosions occurred on the ground. And I haven't seen that from any leaked video. And we generally get these. Even strikes that occur in Yemen, multiple places across Iraq, Syria, in Israel. Like, you get video footage of these detonations because inevitably somebody has their cell phone out, they take a video, don't really know what they're doing, upload it to the internet, and then bam, you got some footage of one of the strikes, even from a distance. Especially because this happened at night, you can see that blast in the distance. We haven't seen that from Iran. And we haven't seen that in the morning. There's been no notable smoke or fires or anything that you would expect following any sort of major attack on military or, in this case, possibly nuclear facilities, which, to bring it back to the target in this location, Isfahan is a major military base there. There's a military airfield there for Iran. It's also the site of their underground Natanz enrichment site, which is one of the key components of the Iranian nuclear program. So we've talked about this in a previous video. One of the possible strike locations for Israel here was the Iranian nuclear program. Isfahan is kind of a major component of that, right? So keep that in mind as we're working through this scenario. All right, and then looking at some reasons why this type of attack, this messaging style, if you will, makes sense in this context. First and foremost, it limits the possibility that either side incurs additional casualties in this tit-for-tat exchange. More casualties, every time there's one, it tends to increase the likelihood of escalation. And I'll get to this in a second, but it kind of looks like both sides are trying to de-escalate, not further escalate into a broader war. So Israel opting to fire long-range standoff munitions from Syrian airspace means that their manned aircraft, the people flying these F-15s, F-35s, whatever they put in the skies, were never put within range of Iranian air defense assets. There's always a risk in any military operation that something goes wrong. However, staying outside of an adversary's air defense network generally reduces the likelihood that you get shot out of the sky, right? Additionally, by pushing these aircraft over Syria to fire these relatively fast and accurate missiles, it reduced the amount of time that Iran had to detect those incoming rounds and respond before they impacted somewhere inside of Iran. The difference there is if Israel had opted to fire long-range missiles from inside of Israeli territory, those would have been detected right away. And Iran would have had a little bit of time there to determine, are we going to respond? Should we strike now? Should we wait until after this attack plays out? And it adds that uncertainty that by doing it this way, Israel helped to alleviate some of that uncertainty. The attack started and ended relatively quickly. Another aspect here is the type of munition that appears to have been used, these blue Sparrow missiles, inert. Right, so they're going to follow a similar trajectory of a normal air-launched ballistic missile, but when they impact, it's just going to hit like a rock. There's not going to be a massive explosion. Now, there still might be a small explosion, and of course, this could still kill somebody or cause significant damage depending on what it hits, but in reality, it's nothing compared to an active warhead. It's kind of like, a way to think about this is a loud knock at your door in the middle of the night when you think that your security system, your perimeter, your fence is impenetrable, right? It's kind of a wake-up call. It sends a quiet message, if you will, to those inside. And it's entirely possible that Israel was targeting, in this case, not necessarily facilities, but patches of dirt in and around some of these key target areas. So again, even if the missile gets through, even if it impacts, it hits a patch of dirt, 500 meters away from the entrance to a nuclear facility, or 1 kilometer away from an airfield for the IRGC, that kind of thing. So what that does is, in this case, it shows that Israel is able to penetrate those defenses. They know where those targets are, and even if there's not going to be a random person standing out in the middle of the field in the middle of the night where there's no detonation, no explosion, Israel's probably pretty safe in expecting that no casualties would result, no damage would result, unless Iran shot these out of the sky and they kind of redirected as they fell down to the earth. Another aspect here in terms of the reasoning is this message is deniable. It's deniable for Iran still. And as of right now, they still are kind of denying it. That appears to be their response. So an Iranian official told Reuters there is no plan for an immediate response. It's not clear who is behind the attack. It's not clear. The Iranian officials are saying it's not clear. We don't know who did this. That plays again in favor of this idea that both sides are trying to de-escalate and save face at the same time. So because there was no active warhead on these inert Blue Sparrow missiles, there weren't any massive explosions that were recorded, right? There's no fires burning this morning where somebody can say, you shot everything down, there was no damage, and what's that big fire in the background? They can take videos all over that area and it looks like business as usual. And we have started to see those come out of Iran already today. So this type of kind of quiet messaging style attack, it allows Israel to prove to Iran that they were able to penetrate their air defenses and gives Iran the ability to publicly say, no, you didn't. There's nothing here. Look, there's no damage. It's overall a path towards de-escalation, which is precisely what one of Netanyahu's advisors said just after this attack. According to Natan Eshal, which I'm sorry, I probably butchered that, he said, quote, nobody wants war with Iran right now. We proved to them that we can infiltrate and strike within their borders, and they were not able to inside of ours. The messages are more important than the grandstanding. We currently have more important tasks, both in Gaza and Lebanon. So again, kind of the idea that this is just a message. Israel doesn't want to lead this thing into a major all-out war with Iran because they do have their hands full right now in Gaza. And with Hezbollah in the southern portion of Lebanon, that could escalate any day. So it kind of fits. Again, tying back the reason why Israel might have carried out this type of sort of messaging attack, if you will. Now, the counter to this, which there's probably a lot, to be fair. This is my prediction as to what happened, and I imagine I can jump down into the comments and see all the reasons I'm wrong. But a couple counterpoints that I thought were worth bringing up, at least at a high level. Iranian state TV put out shortly after midnight that 3 drones were observed in the sky over Isfahan. The air defense system became active and destroyed those drones in the sky. Other Iranian officials said air defenses intercepted 3 drones and there were no reports of a missile attack. So again, we heard suspicious objects, flying objects from some Iranian officials. Others are outright calling these drones. And there were some suggestions that these were even little quadcopter drones, very short range, all things considered, and may have been launched from saboteurs inside of Iran. Whether they were associated with Israel or not is kind of left up for speculation, but they're pointing at this as being more like a terrorist attack in some ways, saying, hey, this is a domestic thing. It wasn't a penetration of air defenses. It was some pesky drones that went up overhead. Don't worry, we dealt with it. Go back to business as usual. That's one of the arguments here. I have no reason to say that that is entirely false or entirely true. It's part of the nature of the challenge. It's part of the challenge right now is we're getting conflicting information. Now, there's still no proof. Iran hasn't provided any evidence as to what they did or did not shoot down. At least I haven't seen anything quite yet. Maybe it's out there on the internet, but they haven't shown fragments from drones or missiles inside of Iranian territory that would point to the source of this strike. Remember, as I'm recording this, the last that we heard from Iran is they said, we actually don't know who's responsible here. So they're not, we've seen them take different stances at different times. The April 1st attack in Damascus, Israel never claimed formal responsibility for that. Right out the gate, Iran said this is Israel. They pointed directly at Israel immediately, which is why they carried out the retaliatory attack with 300 plus drones and missiles just a few days ago. In this case, they are still saying, we're going to have to investigate. Not sure. Wait and see. Could be anything. Right now, it looks like it could be some quadcopters. So mixed messaging, to say the least. We might see more information coming out, more evidence, but if my theory here is correct, that this is really just a messaging type attack using inert warheads to show Iran that they could penetrate those air defenses without the risk of actually escalating by destroying something or killing somebody inside of Iran, it's probably in both countries' best interest to kind of stick with the story that's out there right now and just let everything dial back down. But that's all I got for now. Of course, if interested in this or other national security subjects, be sure to check out our Substack, linked in the description below. We've renamed it recently to Between the Lines with Preston Stewart because it's not just me. I am still contributing, but we've brought on a handful of other experts, analysts, researchers contributing in areas where they are subject matter experts. Things like Myanmar's civil war, 3D printed weapons over there. We've talked about Iran's military-industrial complex, something you don't hear a lot about. The Iranian proxy strategy, how Hezbollah receives their funding, and quite a bit more. Of course, if interested, linked in the description below. But thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.